in my beginning of my third year, I have my idea for dissertation exactly from learning, various papers that have to do more the labor supply, and question myself whether we could think about that for the firm side. So think about we think about, say, wage profile over the life cycle of workers, and like the experience, there's like misery equation, there's all of portfolio of information that have to do with thinking about the life cycle of workers. And I started thinking about, wait, but there is a life cycle of firms. There is, to a certain extent, there is a, firms are, they are born, they grow, eventually exit, or, they get to be big companies. And that process, thinking about life cycle of things like firms, was what ultimately determined my field of study. So I'm interested in firm dynamics, also around the firm dynamics. So I want to contribute to our understanding of what determines that some firms grow while others don't, what determines that, why some firms are created, why some potential entrepreneurs decide not to do it, the role of innovation, the role of customer market. One of my recent projects, this is really, I just started presenting it around, it's a project about what we call scalable expertise. So it's exactly thinking about the determinants of firm performance, and in particular firm size. There are theories to explain why some firms are large while others are not. And broadly, we think there is this thing called like productivity. Some firms are low productivity, they are small, and there are firms that are high productivity and they become large. And the sort of models, there's the few canonical papers that I've been determining this literature. So there is one dimension that, me and my co-authors, we started thinking that was quite important in characterizing heterogeneity across companies. And that had to do with whether they were doing something that is scalable versus something that is not scalable. And so we started thinking that, you can think about expertise as something that is, knowledge, let's think about like it's an input into production that is not labor, it's not capital, it's this, you can call it organizational capital or, broadly knowledge. And there are some components of firms' knowledge that are scalable, that if they know how to do that in the context of, say, one product, they will know how to do that in the context of many other products. But there are other features of knowledge that are specific. There are things that have to do, you know how to produce one type of product, and it's so specific that once that knowledge doesn't really carry to other products. And we thought like that's an important characterization of heterogeneity. And so what we did was we put together a model where we could think that, firms are investing into becoming, more productive, more expert, so increasing their expertise. And there is a component of that investment that has to do with, invest in something that is scalable, that they can apply to all products or all plants. And there are another component that they cannot. So if you think carefully about like what are the implications of that, we basically deliver a model that will predict that large firms will be those, when I mean large, large employment, large sales, they will be the ones that will have multiple units. They will operate many products, many plants. And when you characterize the level of knowledge, you'll see that a large amount of that will be on scalable things. So they are highly scalable. There's their ratio of like scalable knowledge to non-scalable knowledge is quite large. So what we did is, that is actually, it turns out to be quite important. For instance, to understand how firms respond to shocks. So suppose there is an aggregate demand shock. It affects firms' demand. And then you want to understand if small or large firms will respond more to shocks. So that's something that we care for policy, for instance. And so the model has clear predictions that, will indicate that typically large firms, those who are doing a lot of scalable expertise, they will react more to shocks, positive or negative. So what we did, we basically put together a bunch of predictions, right? So the model has a bunch of predictions in terms of how firms respond to shocks and the nature of cross-sectional correlation, say, between things like expertise and productivity and so on. So what we did was put together a bunch of predictions, and we went to the data to test those. And that's exactly, the sort of product that I like, is that there is, an embedded theory, but ultimately there's a big chunk of that paper will be really a careful data analysis. And so, for instance, in this project, we are using product level data. So we actually measure product characteristics. We characterize the portfolio of products of firms into whether they are doing a lot of scalable, meaning things that we see in all products, versus non-scalable. And so we use various measurements of the sort of ingredients that we have in the model, and we tested. And we tested by looking at, we build different shocks. We look at, for instance, the impact of China, in import penetration from China. We look at the impact of housing shock on the demand. We build these shocks, and then we go and test whether, for instance, large or small firms that have more or less expertise or scalable expertise will react more to shock, and we use that to ultimately guide the model. I think that's, in macro, that seems to be a trend happening here. That is, there are many theories that you can write, but ultimately the data should be disciplined that, and that's, I think this project it's a very good specimen of that.